Level 1. The crowned man, the Empress, does not raise her voice when she asks the question. That is what makes it impossible to ignore. You are standing inside her Phoenix Hall before the morning court has fully begun. Dressed in black and gold, the dragon robe heavy across your shoulders, the jade belt tight against your waist. Outside, the palace bells are still fading into the courtyards. Ministers wait beyond the great hall for your first decree of the day. Servants kneel when your shadow passes. Every corridor in the empire seems to understand that you are the man whose words become law. But here, across a low table with a cup of untouched tea growing cold between you, the Empress looks at you as if the crown on your head is not enough to protect you from yourself. Is she worth a dynasty? She asks. No anger, no tears, no broken cup. Only that single question placed before you like a blade wrapped in silk. You do not answer. Not because you fear her, not exactly, but because the truth has already entered the room before you did. Somewhere beyond the Phoenix Hall, behind red curtains and quiet lanterns, there is another woman whose name you have looked at too long, whose chamber your steps have remembered too often, whose silence feels more honest than all the bowing voices of the court. You are the Emperor. You can command armies, punish traitors, open prison gates, close borders, raise a woman to honor or erase her from the record with red ink. Yet one question from your Empress makes the throne feel less like power and more like a cage. Because in this palace, love is never only love. A glance becomes evidence. A visit becomes faction. A favorite becomes a threat. And if the woman who makes you feel human begins to endanger the woman who holds your dynasty together, what does absolute power truly mean? Level 2. The Harem ledger by nightfall. The harem receives you with lanterns, perfume, and silence, arranged like ceremony. The corridors glow red beneath painted beams, and behind every silk curtain, a woman waits with the kind of stillness that has been practiced for years. Some are daughters of generals, some are nieces of ministers, some carry names old enough to open doors before they speak. When you pass, they lower their eyes, but no one is truly looking away. In the harem, every glance has a witness. Behind you walks the female recorder, her brush held above the ledger where your nights become history before they become memory. Which gate you enter, which chamber you pause before, which woman receives a cup, a smile, a second visit. Desire, you learn, has a bureaucracy. You stop before the chamber you should avoid. The movement is brief, barely more than a hesitation, but the corridor tightens around it. A maid notices first, then a noble consort near the far screen. Then the recorder whose brush pauses just long enough to betray that she has seen too much. Inside that chamber lives the woman you cannot name without changing the temperature of the room. She is not the highest ranked. She is not the most politically useful. She does not belong to the family your ministers prefer or the bloodline your Empress trusts. But when she looks at you, she does not look at the dragon robe first. She looks at the weight beneath it. That is why you return. That is why you should not. Across the corridor, another consort smiles gently, but her hand tightens around her sleeve. Farther away, a court lady turns as if to adjust a lantern, though everyone knows she is carrying the news already. You continue walking, but the damage has been done. The harem does not need proof. It only needs pattern. One pause tonight, one visit tomorrow, one gift next week, and soon affection becomes evidence. You thought the harem was full of women waiting for you. Now you understand it is full of people counting where your loneliness goes. Level 3. The true favorite. Her chamber is not the grandest in the harem, and that is part of the danger. If she were the most powerful consort, your visits could be explained as politics. If she were the daughter of a great general, your attention could be called strategy, but she is neither. Her room is warm with red candlelight, quiet music, and the faint scent of jasmine tea left too long beside a bronze mirror. There are no loud jewels on her table, no embroidered screens meant to impress you, no servants rushing to display her importance. Only a single hairpin, a folded letter she never lets you read, and the strange calm of a woman who knows the Emperor's love may be the most dangerous thing ever placed at her door. When you enter, she rises, but she does not perform delight. She does not ask what gift you bring or whether you will stay until morning. She looks at your face first, then at the robe, as if trying to separate the man from the throne, and failing because the palace never allows that separation to last. "You should not come so often," she says. The words are soft enough to be mistaken for modesty. They are not modesty. They are survival. You tell her the harem has no right to question where you go. She almost smiles, and that small sadness wounds you more than open fear. "The harem does not question your majesty," she answers. "It questions the woman you leave behind." You stand near the low table, close enough to see the candlelight tremble in her eyes, far enough not to touch her. That distance becomes its own confession. With other women, you are the emperor visiting a chamber. With her, you become aware of every sound outside the door, every servant who may be listening, every footstep that may carry her name into a room where she cannot defend herself. She gives you no promise, no plea, no carefully trained seduction. She only asks you to remember that being loved by the emperor is not the same as being safe. And still, when you leave, you already know you will return. That is how she becomes your true favorite. Not by asking for power, but by becoming the one person you are no longer strong enough to forget. Level 4. The Empress knows. The Empress waits for you in the Phoenix Hall, as if she has been waiting since before you understood your own heart. The room is arranged with perfect calm. Court ladies standing like painted figures along the walls, a gold phoenix screen behind her chair, a cup of tea on the low table between you, untouched and already cold. She does not ask where you went last night. She does not ask why the recorder's ledger has begun to show a pattern. She does not ask why one woman's chamber, modest and politically useless, has become a road. Your feet remember too well. She already knows. That is what makes her more frightening than jealousy. "Your Majesty may love whom he wishes," she says, her voice smooth enough to sound generous. But the palace will decide what that love means. You look at her and understand why she has survived beside the throne. She is not simply your wife. She is the official center of the harem, the keeper of rank, ceremony, bloodline, and acceptable ambition. If she trembled, others would attack. If she wept, factions would gather. So she does neither. She lets the cold tea speak for her. "A favorite can be enjoyed," she continues. "A true favorite must be measured." You feel anger rise. But anger would make you look like a man defending desire, not an emperor defending order. She knows this too. That is why she asks the question again, softer than before. Is she worth a dynasty? The woman you love is not in the room. Yet suddenly she stands between you and the Empress more clearly than if she had been dragged there in chains. You want to say she is not a threat. You want to say she has asked for nothing. But in this palace, wanting nothing does not make a woman harmless. Being loved by you is enough to give her shape in the minds of your enemies. The Empress finally lifts the tea, then sets it down without drinking. If she becomes important, she says, men will use her. If she bears a child, they will use the child. If you protect her too openly, they will use your protection against you. You leave the Phoenix Hall with no order given, no quarrel spoken, no punishment threatened. And yet the warning follows you like a decree already written in invisible ink. Level 5-2 women for several days. You try to live as if the palace can be divided cleanly in the morning. You sit beside the Empress beneath the Phoenix screen, listening to reports about tribute, rank, ceremony, and the discipline of the inner court. Her voice is controlled, her face unreadable, her hands still around a cup of tea she rarely drinks. She speaks of the harem as if it is a machine built from silk, bloodline, and obedience. And you know she is right. Without her, the palace would not become free. It would become hungry. By night, you find yourself in the red chamber of the woman you love, where the candles burn lower, the music is softer, and no one speaks of dynasty unless the word has already begun to hurt. She does not ask you to choose her. That is almost worse. If she begged, you could call it ambition. If she demanded rank, you could hide behind law. But she only looks at you with the quiet sorrow of someone who knows that your tenderness is not enough to protect her. Between these two women you begin to understand the cruelty of the throne. The Empress does not hold your heart, but she holds the structure that keeps the court from tearing itself apart. Your true favorite does not hold a title that matters. but she holds the part of you that still feels human when the crown becomes too heavy. One woman is duty without warmth, the other is warmth without safety, and you, who can command armies, cannot make them harmless to each other. At court, ministers praise the Empress's restraint. In the harem, servants whisper that the favorite's chamber still glows after midnight. Every act of balance becomes another kind of confession. If you visit the Empress, your favorite learns how easily love can be postponed. If you visit your favorite, the Empress learns how quickly order can be insulted. You begin to see that the question is not which woman you love more. The real question is which woman must be wounded, so the empire can continue pretending it is whole. Level 6. The heir question. The heir question arrives quietly, as the most dangerous questions often do. Not through a public accusation, not through a shouting minister, not even through the Empress herself. It arrives in the genealogy archive, beneath a row of old candles, where names of princes, mothers, ranks, deaths, promotions, and forgotten branches are kept in ink so careful, it almost looks innocent. You stand before the open records with a physician kneeling behind you and a female official, holding the harem ledger in both hands. The Empress has no son yet, your true favorite has no official power, but the court has already begun to imagine futures before any child exists. That is how palaces destroy peace. They fear possibilities until those possibilities become weapons. The physician speaks carefully of timing, health, and observation. The official speaks carefully of nights recorded, chambers visited, patterns noticed. No one says the sentence directly. They do not have to. If the woman you love carries your child one day, that child will not be born into a nursery, it will be born into argument. If it is a son, men will measure his blood against the Empress's authority. If it is a daughter, factions may still use her marriage, her name, her mother's favor, in the palace. Even an unborn child can divide people who have never seen its face. Later, the Empress finds you in the archive, standing before the names of dead princes. She looks at the open record, then at you. This is why the throne cannot love carelessly, she says. There is no triumph in her voice, only exhaustion sharpened by duty. For the first time, you see the fear beneath her control. She is not only afraid of losing your attention, she is afraid of watching the empire split around a woman whose only crime may be being loved too deeply. That night, when you visit your true favorite, you say nothing of the archive. But she knows. She sees it in the way you look at her, as if tenderness has begun to carry consequences neither of you can name. She touches the folded letter on her table and whispers, "If I ever give you a future, will it belong to us or to them?" You have no answer. The palace has already taught you the truth. A child here is never only a child. It is a throne waiting to become a wound. Level 7, the court divides the court. Begins to divide before anyone dares to say it aloud. At morning audience, ministers still kneel in ordered rows, but their silences no longer match. Some bow deeper when the Empress's household is mentioned. Others grow strangely warm when your true favorite's family name appears in a minor report, as if a woman with little official power has suddenly become a door they might one day open. In the harem, gifts begin to move like coded messages. A bolt of silk is sent to your favorite's chamber by a noble consort who has never smiled at her before. A box of medicine arrives without a clear sender. A court lady who served near the Empress asks too many questions about the Red Chamber's candles. Nothing is open enough to punish. Everything is precise enough to be understood. You try to remain balanced. You visit the Empress in public spaces, where every cup of tea confirms that the center still holds. You visit your true favorite less often, hoping distance will cool the rumors. But distance becomes its own rumor. The harem reads absence as strategy, return as confession, silence as guilt. Then your favorite sends a message asking you not to come. The request should relieve you. Instead, it feels like a door closing from the inside. When you see her at last, she is standing beside the bronze mirror with the folded letter in her hand. "They are not only trying to remove me," she says. "Some of them are trying to use me." She shows you names. one minister who praises the Empress in public, but sends servants to her corridor, one noble family that wants her raised. So the Empress can be weakened, one maid who carries whispers both ways. You realize the palace has found the cruelest shape for your love. To your enemies, she is no longer just the woman you want. She is leverage. To the Empress, she is a crack in the order. To the ambitious, she is a ladder. Your instinct is to protect her by pulling her closer, but that would prove every rumor true. Your instinct is to step away, but that would leave her surrounded by hands reaching from the dark. She looks at you with tired clarity and says, "If I stay silent, they will write my ambition for me. If I speak, they will call it proof." For the first time, you understand that the court does not need to defeat your heart. It only needs to make your heart politically useful. Level 8, Dowager's Command. The Dowager does not summon you loudly. She has no need for noise. Her message arrives before dawn on a narrow strip of pale silk, carried by an old attendant who does not lift her eyes after placing it before you. By the time you enter the Dowager's palace, the rest of the court is still waking, but her chambers feel older than morning. Thick curtains hold back the light. Sandalwood smoke hangs low in the air. Medicine bowls sit untouched on carved tables, bitter and cooling, while women who served your father's reign move quietly along the walls like memories that have learned to breathe. Your mother sits behind a screen, not hidden, only separated enough to remind you that her power does not depend on being seen. "The court is dividing," she says. No greeting, no softness. You answer that. The court has always divided around power. "Not around your heart," she replies. The words land harder than accusation. She already knows about the Empress's restraint. The favorite's chamber, the ledger, the gifts, the servants who carry whispers both ways. She knows because the Dowager's palace is where old secrets go when they are too dangerous to die. "You think this is about two women," she says. It is not. It is about which future the palace believes it can control. An attendant places 3 items on the table before you. A sealed order affirming the Empress's authority, a transfer document that would send your favorite away from the inner court, and a blank decree that could raise one woman high enough to break the other. You stare at the 3 roads, and every one of them feels like a wound disguised as policy. The Dowager's voice grows lower. A weak emperor chooses the woman who comforts him. A reckless emperor chooses the woman who excites the court. A ruler chooses the wound that keeps the dynasty alive. For the first time, you hate how calm she sounds. Because calm makes cruelty look like wisdom, you want to tell her that the woman you love has asked for nothing. The Dowager almost smiles. That is why she is dangerous. Men will ask for power in her name. When you leave, the medicine scent clings to your sleeves. You entered as a man torn between his Empress and his true love. You leave knowing the palace has already turned both women into decisions. Level 9. The Red Decree. The decree waits on your table before sunrise. Blank silk stretched beneath the red brush like a quiet accusation. Outside the hall, ministers gather in layers of obedience, each one pretending not to know that the empire has already chosen sides. Behind a screen to your left, the Empress waits without moving. She does not need to speak now. Her silence has become part of the room's architecture. Somewhere beyond the inner gates, your true favorite waits in the red chamber, perhaps already understanding that whatever you write today will not be written in the language of love. The jade seal rests near your hand, cold, polished, heavier than metal should feel. You read the 3 possible roads again. Affirm the Empress completely, and your favorite becomes a tolerated mistake. No one is punished for erasing. Raise your favorite publicly, and the court will call it romance while sharpening knives around succession. Send her away, and you may save her life by teaching her that your protection looks exactly like abandonment. The brush touches red ink for a moment. You remember her voice beside the bronze mirror. "If I stay silent, they will write my ambition for me. If I speak, they will call it proof." Now you are the one writing her fate. The decree you choose confirms the Empress's authority over the inner court, restoring the shape of order everyone can applaud. It also transfers your true favorite to a distant private residence outside the daily reach of harem politics, under the formal language of health reflection and imperial restraint. To the court, it sounds like correction. To the Empress, it sounds like victory without humiliation. To the Dowager, it sounds like a ruler choosing the wound that keeps the dynasty alive. But to the woman you love, when the words are read aloud, it will sound like exile. You press the jade seal into the red mark and feel something inside you answer with pain. No one sees it. That is the skill the throne teaches best. The ministers bow. The Empress remains silent behind the screen. The decree is carried away in both hands, and you understand that the cruelest imperial decisions are not the ones that kill. They are the ones that keep someone alive by making them believe they have been abandoned. Level 10, the empty victory. The palace becomes orderly again after the decree, and that is how you know something living has been buried. The harem corridors grow quiet. The gifts stop moving. The servants lower their eyes with relief, as if the storm has passed, simply because the thunder no longer speaks. In the Phoenix Hall, the Empress resumes her place at the center of the inner court. Her tea is warm again. Her attendants stand straighter. The ledger records fewer irregularities. Ministers praise your restraint in careful phrases, never saying aloud that they had been waiting to see whether the emperor would choose a woman or a dynasty. You chose the dynasty. That is what history will say, if history bothers to mention this at all. But history will not record the silence of the Red Chamber after the decree was read. It will not record the way your favorite accepted exile without begging, because begging would have given the court one final reason to call her ambitious. It will not record the folded letter she left behind, unopened, because you were too afraid that if you read it, you would walk out of the palace and destroy the very order you had just preserved. Days pass. The Empress remains dignified, never cruel enough to celebrate, never soft enough to comfort you. That is her victory and her wound. She has kept her place, but she has also learned exactly where your heart went when duty looked away. Your true favorite lives beyond the inner court, protected by distance, watched by men who do not know why their orders are so strict. She is safer now, perhaps, but safety bought with abandonment has a cold taste. Sometimes you stand before the harem ledger and see how clean the records have become. No repeated visits, no suspicious pauses, no chamber glowing too late after midnight. The palace has been corrected, only you remain incorrect. At night, the throne hall feels larger than before. The dragon pillars rise into darkness. The jade seal sits on the table like a stone that has learned your weakness. You still have power, you still have the Empress, you still have the harem, the ministers, the armies, the ceremony, the right to command every door to open. But you no longer believe that open doors mean freedom. You understand now that the throne does not take love from you by force. It teaches you to surrender love in the language of wisdom, stability, and necessary sacrifice. It makes cruelty sound responsible. It makes absence look like protection. It makes a man wound the person he loves and then calls him a ruler for not bleeding in public. This is your empty victory. The dynasty stands. The Empress remains. The woman you love survives somewhere beyond your reach, and the emperor continues to sit above everyone. But the man inside the dragon robe has learned the final truth. Absolute power is not the ability to choose anyone you want. It is the burden of knowing that every choice you make becomes a wound someone else must carry. And if you want to enter another forbidden imperial story, comment which emperor, dynasty, or palace secret we should step into next.